What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, which sits at 92,300 as I record after falling all the way from $108,000 just 3 days ago. We've got the altcoin market over here with a lot of volatility as well after hitting the all-time high. Prices in a straight line down as well throughout the whole market as XRP teases on top of support to tell us whether or not that's going to be good enough with the 2021 high on the XRP price chart, or like we've talked about on the market cap, are we having to go back and test about $1.50, which is the 2021 high for the market cap? As of right now, XRP still just sits right down here above the current range lows that were set back there on December 10th. Really, we're just waiting to see if this market is going to find some general support at all after being straight line down for 3 days. So in this video, we're going to talk about a couple of different things. One is that Bitcoin has gone the full extension for the target of waves of equal length. A precise nail there, now acting very much like it's in distribution. So we'll talk about potential distribution structures for Bitcoin. We'll also talk about the altcoin market here and that it is common to find extreme resistance back at the previous all-time high before the final parabolic wave of the market does come in. Actually, very normal to see stuff like that happen right there, and then the ending comes in. We'll take a closer look at what these can look like as the market is trying to create the parabola and how violent this can be before we do. We'll see if we're kind of matching structures similar to that. And then we'll spend some time talking about the XRP price chart. Now, the first thing, of course, is that we see that Bitcoin has gone the full extension wave of what we had anticipated. That this could be a wave of equal length for Bitcoin. We've hit the wave of equal length. And while that's a pretty strong reaction off of it. So the question is, if it's going into distribution, what can distribution look like? And this is where you're left with a couple of different challenges in here while we're still waiting for some type of support to come in. You could really kind of make two different arguments here. One, you could argue, hey, this is kind of like, your first leg of distribution happening where, this thing's going to be prolonged over the course of the next 6 to 7 months in here. It's highly unlikely it'll even look exactly like that. However, alternatively, rather than looking at it through the lens of being, this is just the early phases of it and it's going to last for a long time, being more like, no. We're like really far into this thing. That you're like already there. In which if you kind of look at it through that lens, it's like you can kind of see all your little phases have already happened in here. In here, there's your new high, corrects, and then whoop, corrects, and then whoop, and then violence. And that maybe it'd be like somewhere around here. Maybe today is kind of like being right there as we've pulled down pretty far, but yet still we haven't taken out that low yet, right? Which would still leave, 30 more days of action left in the market. Not unreasonable. Now, looking over here, this is a correction structure we've talked about for a long time. Also, this is what it would look like upon escaping out of here. Now, if you recall, a lot of my thoughts over here on XRP are that we'd still be in this range for quite a while. But I've pointed to and talked about this thing happening where you get a breakout. It looks like it's the real breakout. Then it just violently pulls back down in here. And it's like, hey, man, what happened? Essentially, that's that right there, right? You think you're getting out. You think everything is beautiful and wonderful. And then suddenly it just A, B, C corrects all the way right back down. That's been this thought right here on XRP in the event that the range played out like that. And well, even I might have to be kind of rethinking that we may be further along and that maybe we're already in that. Judging by looking over here, that we've just completed an ABC correction down to the support level. I think it's reasonable to think that could be the case to ultimately end with the parabola and a parabola as we've been discussing over here. But we have to kind of ask ourselves, what environments is it that you actually get parabolas or that you get like these crazy endings to markets to happen? And hate it or love it, they tend to show up in environments like this. They tend to show up when Bitcoin's in distribution. You're kind of coming in near the end, and then you have the final blow in the market. And it's weird to think of it in that way, where it's like, oh yeah, it looks like everything is going to come to an end here pretty soon, and it's going to be terror. But before that terror, there's like a crazy wild moment that comes first, and I still see that, and I don't see anything alarming me at this point that we're not just doing something we would typically do prior to getting that parabolic push that really just kind of concludes the market. And I know it's so bizarre to explain it that way and say it in that manner of being like the conclusion of the market, but at the same time, like most people would frame that in the biggest bull run of our lives. But what it really is, it's a parabolic blow off, right? And that concludes everything. That's the ending. It's that, this was the whole ride, right? Back to the high, and then came the ending. And that this has been the whole ride back to the all-time high, and then that's the ending, right? And people don't usually tend to think of it in that manner of being like, no, you're like really far. Change that color. You're really far. And then that is how much time remained. Just a sliver of time in the grand scheme of things. Then it was years of this. And it's being like, hey, we could talk about it in that manner of like really cool, really exciting, but like when do these things show up? They tend to show up in like distributions for Bitcoin, parabolic endings for Bitcoin, and the blow off endings for markets. And while it does a lot better for engagement and stuff to characterize it as like the greatest bull run in the history of all time is right around the corner, it also, try to paint it in that real picture of being like, hey, look at, nothing's acting differently of like that type of event happening, but like going into that event being like, yeah, that's typically how they come to a conclusion. And then afterwards it's that. But typically there is this thing first. And it's not unusual for there to be volatility happening right here before that can get itself set into motion. Typically some support being back tested. Nothing really looks all that nuts. And while we're even getting an okay reaction, at least out of XRP so far here on these lows. But I'm definitely getting text messages, and you know who you are, goofing off, sending this kind of stuff. And I'm texting those people that have been like, I'm going to wait for lower prices. You going to buy? And while I'm not really getting any responses, but that may just be because it's too early in the morning, or because, everybody wants to buy when it's high, but when it's low, it's always terrifying. But, you can look around the market. Some stuff, boy, it has shown how illiquid it is. Some stuff has really just kind of held up okay. We've talked a lot about these things over here for like Cardano. This one Cardano surprisingly, it's held up really well during all of this. But that wouldn't be the case for everything. One of them we looked at like that was like with Polkadot. I mean, it's acting in line with, what we would expect if we were going to do the same things we've done before. It's not bizarre to see that. So even though that seems large, it's not really out of line. There's some stuff where it's like, ugh, like things like Optimism, unable to get back to the March highs and then doing that, or even TIA, just nasty. It's not like it's set a new low or anything, but definitely not giving any indication of isolated strength. Hedera has held up well during all of this. Ethereum still unable to get through that 786 Fibonacci retracement level. Again, kind of like we were just talking about with XRP, one of those things of, was it that the violent knockback maybe coming a little earlier for Ethereum in here. So as long as like the current levels hold in here, and that like we're looking over there on the altcoin market cap being at a support level here for Ethereum, you can make the argument that things are okay and things can ramp up here in the altcoin market. I think the big thing that'll be more difficult is going to be on things like Bitcoin and what the narrative of crypto is going to be like here over the next couple of weeks and months. I mean, 99% of people will not agree with my idea of distribution happening in here, because it's not good for social media. It's not good for an engagement. And there's a lot of special interests out there to perpetuate a different narrative. So the crowd won't get that messaging likely, but we'll see if that ends up being it. But I think there are some interesting observations to make in here, at least right now. In 2021, when the top of the market came in, we only had 20% of the cryptos even capable of setting new all-time highs. And half of those that did set new all-time highs just barely did it by like the skin of their teeth. They didn't go like into full-blown expansion. So it was like 10% of coins that actually went into actual expansions in 2021. So it's, been thought that we'll probably see something similar to that, whether or not it's the same percentages or not, or if it's more or if it's less. But like looking through what we've just kind of experienced here in the market here in the last several days is like who has really kind of shown more strength and who has shown more weakness. And, things that have been really big leaders in the market have been Cardano, Hedera Hashgraph, XRP, and SWI. And really all those charts have not shown like exceptional weakness of like what you see in a lot of stuff that's really more liquid, or things that have just kind of already been struggling. The things that have kind of like already been struggling kind of took a bigger hit, but the things that have been showing strength into the rally, being the leaders like HBAR, XRP, SWI, and Cardano, still have nice technical structures happening of what still seems like normal price behavior. You know, all it takes is a cascading liquidation for those things to change, but they've still just kind of continued to hold up. I mean, XRP is still holding that low after everything that just happened in this market, where it's just constantly liquidating itself each day. We're getting hundreds of millions, and over 24-hour periods, over a billion. Somehow SWI still hasn't set a low. And like we showed with HBAR just a minute ago, still just way up there. I mean, the things that have shown the strength at the gates are still just kind of holding up well during all of this. So kind of some food for thought for those who are like thinking about dumping money into the market. Again, I don't tell you when to buy or when to sell or anything like that, but if you're looking around and kind of taking a look at different coins and being like, oh, this one looks good or not, and you know, there can always be a surprise. Like in 2021, Ethereum Classic was the big surprise that nobody thought would happen. It was the big one, right? It was a laggard, but then was one of the biggest performers. But that wasn't the case for most things like that. But these things that have just kind of taken the lead and held themselves up well, we'll see how those hold up as we near the end of all this. But I think the grand point of it all is, you know, we're still waiting for confirmation of a support to come in here. I do still think this is just all-time high jitters that inevitably lead to the big turnaround and then the big final ending that, you know, really is the actual final ending. Trying to kind of show you that over here in these charts. And, you know, when we started the video, probably about an hour ago when I started recording it, looks like there is a little bit of bouncing happening here at least. So far, XRP is holding up there after hitting back down on those lows, and Ethereum finally showing a little bit of life to it here now after closing the whole breakout gap from back here on November 21st. So I think obviously the first step we're looking for here is just calm down, market. We've just been liquidating 3 days straight. You know, the first thing that always goes through the general mass's head is, you know, we're crashing, it's over, it's going to zero, right? And that's typically not the case. So I've spent this video to try to kind of present the ideas of being like, hey, look, can these things happen in a normal environment? Can you do these types of things and have these types of reactions back at the all-time highs? And can these percentages like be normal, right? Like you go back and relive over here into 2021 and back at the all-time high, how big was that hit, right? That was a 35%er right there at the all-time high. What are we at right now? Probably something similar. So look. 26, right? So just kind of putting it into perspective of being like, you know, hey, do these feel good? Nah, they never feel good. Are they normal to happen where they're happening at? Yeah, they are. Is it something that you can do before going into a parabolic ending of a market? Yeah. Well, what usually happens when you're actually having a parabolic ending to a market? Well, you're usually in distribution, right? So trying to paint the picture the best I can in a reasonable way. Could you be going into distribution for Bitcoin? Yep. Did the full measured move of the 107,000? Can you have one big leg happen in the altcoin market into a retracement? Yep, you can. Would that be the sell wave? Well, I'll never tell you what to do, but I probably will. So seems pretty reasonable. Just a total market cap of all of crypto, including Bitcoin, including all the altcoins, backtesting that previous all-time high in there. As I've talked about, my personal targets in here, trying to get a 4.236 extension of this range from March to the low there in August. It's really my primary area. But in general, things seem okay today. Let's just see these liquidations stop so that we can say, all right, now we have a couple of days of where things have settled. We've seen high volume. We've seen high buy volume. Right now, we're kind of in the thick of, that's the third day in a row of liquidations. Like, things we'll look at to be like, hey, look, things look good now is things of, hey, look, it looks like there was high buy volume that bought those bottoms that time. The liquidations have stopped. Retail kind of capitulated. We'll see if there's some evidence of that in social trends. And while nothing screams like it's the end of the world, then backtesting the all-time high, right? So seems like things have kind of calmed down since I started recording a couple of hours ago. We were essentially just straight line down right here when I started recording, and that's a pretty clear alleviation from what was going on overnight. Lots of technical levels being hit here on various charts and market caps, and so far things seem okay. I think the big challenge here is going to be navigating Bitcoin in an environment of distribution. And while there is something very particular we would be looking for to confirm that it is distribution, at least if we're going to use past market cycles to tell us that it is, right? we can look at this structure. We could say, hey, it looks like 2021's, but you would want to look for the exact same underlying market conditions happening in there that would indicate that it is distribution. And one of those things would be if Bitcoin just kind of, does this and goes back into this retracement in here, yet the altcoin market goes rallying off into that new high. That's the thing we would be looking for to confirm it and be like, okay, is this okay? Right? Just getting back to this 702 retracement or into these retracement levels really isn't good enough to say, hey, it's definitely distribution. The thing that would be really clear evidence of it would be that break of the all-time high for the altcoin market where it's rallying, it's doing its own thing, it's going parabolic, and Bitcoin's not. That would be the big thing of being like, hey, look, these typically mark really terrible signs ahead. And so that's a ways away from where we'll kind of be in that. But I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for us right now that if we get that, right, if we get back into the retracement level and like, let's say the altcoin market's just kind of like hanging out right here. Well, that's not what typical distribution looks like. It may not be the end for everything. Like, remember this thing from last year? Just kind of pulled one of these fancy things and then just kept on going, right? There was no element of that happening in the altcoin market when we were right here back into the retracement. But if we got back in here and then that is, we've been doing that. We've got some big parabolic thing happening over here in the altcoin market. And it's been in like some major bubble when that happens. That's typically the clear sign. So either way, for today, I'm sure everybody's waking up being like, what's going on in the market? Lots more liquidations, but it does look like there's some support starting to show up in here. XRP found some supports in there so far, at least. And the total market cap of crypto finding some supports in there as well. So hopefully that was the conclusion of it. We'll look for high volume signatures to show up from today's daily candle close. And if we get that, that's a good sign. Since I started recording the video, SWE has popped up 16% and XRP has jumped about 10%. So it's always a challenge to make these videos when we're kind of in the thick of kind of a lot of craziness happening in the market because your video can become irrelevant very quickly if cascading liquidations continue to happen. But fortunately, we do appear to be finding some type of support here. And as you can see, that total market cap just really right there at that all-time high. So we'll see how the rest of the day goes. Definitely looking for more greenery to show up there on the right side of that screen as we get to the end of the day. Like we talked about in these volatile weeks with the Fed, a lot of times it's volatile the day before, the day of, and the day after. Well, that's 3 days. Well, what have we had? We've had 3 days of liquidations in the market. But typically by Friday, things can start to calm down. So hopefully we see that, but we'll be looking for volume profiles to tell us that is the case. And if so, and hopefully that's the conclusion of this thing, and we can start ramping our way up to actually have the exciting part of this market. Fortunately, prices calm down so I can actually publish my video. So, all right, guys. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's a challenging time out there in the market when prices are like this. Nobody likes it, and I don't like it, but it's just part of the game. So we'll check in on it soon, and we'll look to see if we get the high volume turnaround here by the time the daily candle closes today. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. You can check out my newsletter over here on blockchainbacker.substack.com. The most recent one was published there this week, Getting Ready, Crypto's Parabolic Moment, talking about examining parabolic expansions, the 20 coin portfolio performance that I purchased back there in September, exit psychology, preparing, and restructuring. It includes a 48-minute audio recording that I recorded myself. And of course, you get access to all the past ones as well if you sign up for the newsletter here at blockchainbacker.substack.com. If you'd like to learn how to set up your own charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro, you can check out my website, bcbacker.com. There are links down here in the description of each of my videos to bcbacker.com and to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com. Otherwise, that'll do it for this one. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.